Welcome to Tea, Toast, and Theology, all things nourishing, presented by The Table. Find us on the web at the-table.church.
Right? Because the assumption was that someone is going to be there gathering and doing the worship of our living God, regardless if I can get there or not. Right? And I have to tell you, that has lifted me up in a huge way. Because that means that we truly understand that the reason why we gather is to worship our living God. And there is nothing in the world, no storm, nothing that can stop us from doing that. And we had the most wonderful time, right, Jay? You were there. We had the most wonderful time last night. We were just a few of us. Dennis, you were there, right?
Yeah.
We were just a few of us. You were there, Moni, and you were there, and you actually organized everything, right? and it was few of us, but we had a wonderful, wonderful time together. And Pastor Mike actually joined us because his daughter wanted to be with us, I guess, and we had a wonderful time. And Dennis had brought some sandwiches, and then there were some salads and coleslaw. And I can tell you, it turned out to be like that miracle we read about last week of 2 fish, and it just multiplied, and we all ate. And we all ate to our heart's content, and
One
then
sandwich
pizza
left over.
and we had
One
things-
sandwich left over.
Oh, and we had one sandwich left over, and we had pizza that we actually generously were able to send home with other people for
Yeah.
the people we knew had need. And so we really had that experience last night, I would say, of being in there, worshiping our God, being one together with God, and experiencing that. So I just want to thank you all. I'll encourage you to sustain that faith. Sustain that faith, where we don't gather just for each other, just for good times, just for, saying we are such a good people, right? But we gather for God, and then God makes everything possible for us. That is our faith. So, any observations from the readings today?
Well, I have one. In the second reading, which is very long, I picked out, Paul talking about how Christ went into he descended as well as ascended. And being a scuba diver, I descend a lot and ascend. But there's an region called the Twilight Zone. And it's not because strange things happen there, like on TV, but it's really an area of the ocean which is before it gets very, very black, or dark. So it's probably ranged from something like 600 feet down to 2,000 feet or something. And most of the time people think, well, the Twilight Zone, that area is uninhabited. They're up and above where the sunlight is, or we've discovered new species and things down below in the dark, in the depths. But there's a book out called The Twilight Zone, and I've been reading it. And it's really interesting because it reminded me in the second reading, when Christ descended, we think he descended into hell, right? That's what we used to say in the creed. And now it's, in the region where people have died, all right? But I like to think of that region as the Twilight Zone, because light was already with these people. They were the believers. They were Moses and even David, who repented, etc. And they needed Jesus to save them. And so he descended, but into the Twilight Zone, where the light had already come to them in some form or another with God. And Jesus now became the bread of life for them. He raised them up to be able to be with God eternally. And that just struck me very much, so I just wanted to share that reflection.
Thank you. Any others? Amen.
The line in the psalm, and it probably sticks with me because I've sang it so many times, but
create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. And I actually find myself anytime I get angry about something or I feel like I've done something wrong, it runs through my head. And it's almost like this cleansing of, you forget, you need to do that reconciliation, you need to do that confession, because nobody's perfect, but what you want is that clean heart. I want the right spirit in me. And that struck with me, and it actually runs throughout the readings if you look at it.
Thank you, Amanda.
I felt the first reading in 2 Samuel was a good example of authenticity, in that at first David didn't want to admit anything, but at the end he certainly did. He came back and said, I'm wrong. And I also thought, on a lighter note, that Nathan's response to him after telling him his story, the fact, "you are the man," was very much in contrast with the way we use it today. Like, "you are the man." It wasn't like that at all. It was like, "you are the man that did wrong," right? So, in that way. So.
I saw something in the second reading, that idea of kind of the maturity and not going with the the way the winds are blowing. Al, I saw that connection to the where you had started us this morning. Just that idea of being able and comfortable with standing your ground, who you are, and that tying into the gospel as well. That Jesus calls out the people for you're following me, but follow me for the right reasons. He's not telling us don't follow me, but understand why. It's not just because I'm going to feed you today.
I also, I don't know if this is off track, but I also take comfort whenever, I think about my own sins or, what have you, that every chosen person in the Bible sinned. I mean, well, every chosen leader in the Bible by God sinned. King David sinned. Moses sinned. And that's not a good thing, but it gives me, it makes me feel better, because they were in direct contact with God, and they were, David was a man after God's own heart, and he still sinned against God. So how much more imperfect am I going to be, you know what I mean, than Moses or David, and Moses was the most humble man on earth. The Bible says that's why God, God chose him. He was the most humble man on earth. And, I said, well, if those guys messed up, it's okay if I mess up, so that gives me some solace.
Thank you.
And on top of that, I always think of the apostles. These were 12 very flawed people. Peter, the first one selected. Peter got things wrong a lot more than he got things right. So there is hope for us.
It's me. When Nathan said to David from the God, somehow it sounds like telling me my heart was hurt. Listening to God is saying to you, I gave you everything. If that hadn't been little, I would add more. What else should you want more? You are not thankful. Somehow in my mind that, we are not thankful. I'm sorry, I cannot say we. Maybe me, I'm not thankful. I always compare to someone else more than me. And we have something in the bathroom, start with a thankful heart. And I'm trying to every morning give thanks to God. And this is stuck in my mind that do you want more? How greedy you are. You are not thankful. And the second thing was in my mind that some people have in position to powerful, they abuse their powers. And they forget about where power coming from. They forget about God. And that's it.
All right. Okay, so last week we talked about this story of David, right? That's when we heard about what he did. And part of that conversation that happened last time was, were there any consequences for him? Because we read this, and I remember, Peggy, you said, no, keep reading, right? Because consequences are coming, right? And there are consequences, right? There are some, and it actually were more than what he's told here that happens to him, right? But what I today want to focus on, this. Last time we brought up that all these people had sinned and Moses had killed. Jed had brought this. And I said, but don't leave this place thinking you can do all that and then somehow it's okay because people in the Bible did it. No, it's not okay. The story is that it's not okay, right? We can sometimes read these stories and say, "Oh, we are okay because they were great people and they did." No, it's not okay. And those stories are written for us so that we can know what is okay and what is not okay, right? And so that is really the point of these stories. And today we have this wonderful section where Nathan is told by God to do this, and he's like, okay, how am I going to confront this powerful person? Okay? And he has a beautiful strategy. He goes and tells him a story. Okay, why do you think he tells him this particular story?
Because David was a shepherd boy.
Yes! Because David was a shepherd boy. David was a shepherd boy. And this story of this lamb was close to his heart. He understood the value of a lamb. He understood the value of the lamb. He understood what it meant to be a shepherd boy, to be close to the sheep, to know how much it means, how much that little lamb means to the person, and his sense of justice. So I would say Nathan was genius, because Nathan was given the task to go and confront David. And he had to think of a way, how am I going to confront David that would make sense to him, that would evoke in him something, right? You see how difficult the work of the prophet is? You see? We think it's so easy to be prophet. You just stand there and you say whatever you feel like it. No. You have to first understand the people that you are actually talking to. You have to really know them. You have to really know them. That's why I've been telling some of us that we need to know what the people of Shelton are like before we can even talk to them. If we don't know what the people are like, we'll be talking somewhere and they'll be like, okay, whatever. It will not evoke anything. Right? We need to know who we are talking to. And Nathan knows who he is talking to. And then he has the confidence. After he has told him the story and those emotions well up in David, the sense of justice comes to him, and then he very quickly equates that injustice with the injustice that David just did. Isn't that interesting that all this time David thought he had done nothing wrong? Even when his sense of justice is evoked, he is completely clueless to the wrong that he has done. And you see how important it is to not live in our own silos, in our own chambers. Because we can live in our own silos and in our own chambers and construct our morality around it and think that we are right. Because we are never willing to hear another opinion, another perspective, another voice coming into ours. Because we found a way to solve the problem like David. David was pretty confident he solved his problem. His moral dilemma, he got rid of it. Right? And he didn't even think about it after that. And only when a different perspective, a perspective even closer to his home, gets him going, then the work of the prophet comes to say those words. You are the man. Just imagine the guts it takes to say those 3 words, or 4 words. You are the man. You are the man. Just imagine the strength that Nathan would have to gather for himself. I remember I was in the 4th grade. I had just, gone to school in September, and then in October, I was in a Roman Catholic school, and they were very particular about what we wore, right? So there was a uniform, and and part of the uniform was a blazer that we had to wear, which none of our families could afford, so we had to go to used stores to get these. And then we had to wear a tie, right? So that we all looked like, we were wearing business suits around, like, imagine, 4th grade, So that's how we dressed. And so the principal, in his own genius, decided that he was going to keep all the neckties in his own office on his desk, and he would have each student come and buy from him. And that was his way of connecting with all the students. He decided that would be a great idea. That way I will get to meet all of the kids, right? Because all of them would have to get the necktie. And so you couldn't just wear any old necktie with blue color or blue or golden stripes. No, it had to be bought from the school, right? So there it was. And I went in there, and I had 2 other brothers, and they were in 9th and 10th grade. So one of them was about to leave in Pakistan, you only go up to 10th grade because you're expected to mature sooner. And so you only have till 10th grade. 10th grade is your high school, and then you go off to college. He was in 10th grade. I don't know if he was mature or not, but yeah, he was in 10th grade. And the other brother was in 9th grade, and I was in 4th grade. And so they both were prefects. They were in the leadership of the school. And so I go there, and I wanted to buy a necktie for me. So my parents had given me the money for the necktie. So I went there, I paid for the necktie. He asked me, who are you, what are you, and he took the money, and he said, wait, don't you have brothers who are in the school as well? And it was not that hard to identify me because I was one of the very few Christians in the school, okay? So it was not very hard. When you hear that name, it was pretty, there were probably 5 or 10 of us in the entire school, and so it was not that hard to identify who we were. And so he said, Okay, but don't you have other two brothers here? I said, yeah, they are here, and actually one of them was a prefect and one wasn't. I said the one who's a prefect is getting a free tie, and the principal is playing along. He's having fun with this, little boy, 9-year-old kid, right? So he's like, oh, really? Oh, so they're getting a free tie? I said, yeah, they're getting a free tie. I thought that was great, getting a free tie. And he said, okay, what about the other brother? And I said, yeah, he's going to come and buy his own. He said, okay, no, why don't you take one for him as well? I said, I can't. And he said, why not? I said, because I don't have the money for it. And he said, no, take it. And I said, no, I just told you I cannot. I don't have the money for it. He said, take it for free. Your other brother is getting for free. Take this for free. I said, no. This is supposed to be for money. So he's not a prefect, right? He has to buy the tie, so I'm not taking it for. So there it is. I'm not going to take it for that.
Honest.
And then he said, okay, why don't you take it and bring the money tomorrow? And I told the principal, I was 9 years old, I told the principal, I have a better idea. Right? And my better idea was, I'll come tomorrow with the money and you can give me the tie tomorrow. And he said, whatever, and I left. I didn't take the tie from him. And, huh?
And so it begins.
And so it begins. Right? So, and then it was Christmas time, and Christmas time we used to have a joint worship service of all Christians, Catholics and Protestants, everybody together. We would have this wonderful celebration. And after that worship service, it used to happen either at the Catholic Cathedral or at our cathedral. So this time it was our cathedral where it was happening, and whenever it happened at our cathedral, there was a reception at our house afterwards. And so our principal was there at the worship service, and afterwards he came to our home, and he said to my parents, your son is tough. And he said, you whatever you have done, you have given him a very, very strong compass, moral compass. That doesn't go anywhere, right? And I tried my best. I tried applying pressure on him as principal. He wouldn't give in. Now that's the story that the world knows. The story that the world doesn't know, that I came home and cried. Right? Because it was intense. It's not easy to stand and look at your principal and say, I'm not doing what you're going to tell me to do, because you are wrong. Right? It's not easy to stand up and say what Nathan did. It's not easy to stand up to power and tell the power that you are wrong. But I am so proud of you all, because you became a part of doing that. Standing up to power and saying, no, you are wrong. No, you're wrong. Right? And here's what I believe. And this is, I don't know why at that age even I had that compass. I don't know why. I know my parents had very strict morals, right? They had a very strict compass about things. And until the end, my parents maintained that compass, especially when it came to money and when it came to power. Because my dad often used to say to other bishops who were going off the rails, it's very easy to go off the rails when you're a bishop, because you have all the power. Everybody comes to you and tells you you are the greatest, you are doing the best job ever. Everybody wants to be in your good books and tells you everything. And all of that is mostly, I would say 75% or above times, all false, right? But that's what people do because they want to get into your good books, right? And so it's very easy to go off the rails. And like I said last time, the most important thing in life is that when you have the power to know the limits of your power and to exercise restraint, because no one else is going to do that for you. No one else is going to do that for you. You yourself have to know to apply restraint in your power. And David did not apply restraint in his power. That's what abuse is, when you keep on going with the power that you have, right? And my dad used to say to these bishops when they would fall off the rails, he would say to them, you have all the power in the world. You are the bishop. What else do you want? He would say, what else do you want? Like, how much do you want? Come on, how much do you want? And that is what is so beautifully reflected in this story that Nathan tells David. How much do you want? That rich man had everything. He had so many. But he wanted more. How much do you want? And that is at the key of what happens when we go about not knowing where to stop. Right? And so, what I find beautiful in this passage, in the second passage where it talks about speaking truth in love. My friends, we find in Christian faith one of the most difficult things to do is to know how to love and how to speak truth in love. And sometimes we think that we are being loving by not being truthful. We make that decision a lot of times, that we are being loving by not being truthful. And the tension in Christianity is that, yes, be loving, but you have to be truthful. Because in the end, guess what? When you are truthful is when you can put a stop to people like David. Because if you don't do that, if you're not truthful, people like David will go on. They will go on. They do it to one people, they'll do it to another people. Then they'll do it to another people, they'll do it to another people. Especially if they have gotten away with doing it with one people, they'll definitely do it with another. Right? And that is where Christian faith comes up, where we have to stand up and say, in truth. And the beauty of this story is that Nathan did it with love. And I find it really troubling that oftentimes we think, oh, let's not be judgmental, when in fact we don't wish to be truthful.
It can be lonely, though. People will walk away.
Yes, and that is the prime thing. That is exactly right. We are a social animal, right? We love to be in communities. And you know what? It becomes extremely lonely when you do that.
Yep.
It seems like it's personal experience. Right? 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 It gets, and this is exactly why we, all of us who believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, form a community. Remember, I just said that you all came together as a community to speak that truth to power? If it was just me, I would be in bed today. Lonely. Right? That is what makes our Christian faith so strong, that we are not alone. in speaking truth to power, that we speak that truth to power as a community. And within the community, there is a beautiful process, right? You use the word reconciliation, right? There's a beautiful process of reconciliation, which all of us proposed over and over again, right? Right? There's a beautiful process of reconciliation. And you know why it's so beautiful? Because it is done in the sanctity of a community, where the entire community is involved in the process. But there's also room for someone when you speak one-on-one. And when that fails, you go to the next level. Then when that fails, you go to the next level. When that fails, you go to the next level. Not so that you can publicly humiliate someone. That is not the intention. Because sometimes, as we all know, we experienced it, the whole idea is take it public, so it's public humiliation, right? That's not the biblical process, right? And the beauty of this is that when it is done right, like Nathan did it, the response is absolutely beautiful. What's the response? I accept that I didn't do it right. I have sinned. I need to confess. That, my friends, is the beauty of our Christian faith. Nathan did not say, "You are done being the king." Nathan said, "There will be justice for you. There will be consequences, okay, and of equal nature, right? There will be consequences of equal nature for you. But there is also a possibility for you to learn from this and move forward with even greater strength." And that, my friends, is the beautiful news that we hear in the gospel today. Jesus confronts the people and says, "You are only doing this because I fed you. You are not interested in my conversation about God. You're only interested in food." And I have said it over and over again, what we do on Saturdays, and we offer free food for anyone who wants to come and eat with us. There is no, like, okay, do you fit the bill or no, or there is no standing through a line and you'll be handed food. None of that, right? Everybody comes and is equal in that meal, right? And I have said it over and over again that the main feature of that meal is not the physical food, though we work very hard on the physical food. The main feature of that meal on Saturdays is that we are building a Christian community where the bread of life, who is Jesus Christ, is honored, recognized, worshipped, and adored. That is the main point of Saturday evenings. And yes, we do it through bread like Jesus did. And Jesus found another beautiful way to do it. Feed the people, and when they come to you, use that to talk about spiritual nourishment. And so, my friends, today I'm encouraging all of us who have gone through this process, have done it so well, to never lose sight of it, to never be afraid of being alone, because together we are never alone. And we are never alone because God is always with us. Even when you feel that you are alone, you are never alone. Right? And even when, and this was just one story from my life, over and over again, as you can imagine, I had these stories in my life. And each time I would go home and cry, because it was not easy to do. Because it was not easy to be that kid who had that moral compass. Because I would not get invited to all the fun parties. Right? You see? It was very hard. But it was the right thing to do. I don't have any regrets. I hope you all have no regrets. Right? I hope that we can continue to bring people into creating that space, which is open, loving, filled with the Holy Spirit, filled with the idea of possibilities. That is one of the core values we stood for. And it's so beautiful that in our process that came up. Believe in possibilities. And then lead by example. Lead by example. And thankfully we are doing that. We are leading by example. So there's one last thing that I would say. And this is something that's overlooked in Christian faith. That Jesus believed that the world will be a beautiful place, not just by him saying, I am the bread of life, but when we all will start living out that he is the bread of life. And that means, my friends, and I'm going to say something strong here, and that means that it is incumbent upon each and every one of us to feed people not only physical food, but also spiritual food. No matter where you are, you can do that. You can be that person who can start creating the community in which truth in love can be said. And a consequence of saying that would not be tears, but great rejoicing in someone's confession and amendment of life.
Thank you for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe.